Hey everyone, J-Rod Place here, and I am finally free of the mines. As you can see, I am 450 power now. I was able to get that done on Friday the 15th, the week of solstice. I should have actually been done somewhere like late Wednesday, but I kept getting duplicates at around 446. I got 3 that kept me stuck at 446. I needed a 3 drop, and I got a 1 drop, and then I kept getting a duplicate of that 1 drop. So I finally, by the 3rd one, I was able to finally get to 447 to where 450s would drop from primes. So I got delayed on Wednesday and most of Thursday for that, and then finally I was able to get some good drops that I needed, and I was only down to needing 1, and I got that 1 on Friday finally. And for me, I was able to actually speed through the rest of the 3 that I was missing because I strategically saved a couple of things for that scenario, and I'm going to go over that as well. Now, while I'm loading into the tower, I just want to cover a few things that are important when it comes to getting to 450 from that 400. I made a couple of videos about my experience initially when I was at 400, talking about how the 20 run guarantee is a myth and a lie, basically, which is true if you're not using new gear. Then I made a follow-up video saying, hey, I figured out what was going on. Putting on new gear cut my drop rate in more than half, and it really did. My drop rate went from that 27 to 30 per prime down to as low as 6 per prime doing creation. And a couple of other places I got a little bit lucky. I think I got one like 7 or 8 on Caldera, but for the most part K1 was around 10, Caldera was around 10. Creation again anywhere between 6 and 12 was my average on drop rates for creation, so that was my most efficient drop rate. However, it's slower than K1 on Hive Day, so the 10 drop on K1 is actually technically faster. For like actual real time, I was getting one every half hour, so 2 an hour on the K1, and that's really going to be the most efficient grind, I think, in my opinion, as far as your time. Now, as far as ease of use, creation is where it's at, because creation has a bonus of only killing enemies, which you're going to kill no matter what, just waiting on the plates. And yeah, they're 5-minute runs, 5.5-minute runs, so that does slow you down a little bit, whereas a K1 is like a 2 to 3 minute run, but you don't have to worry about like precision kills. You don't have to worry about like killing like 60 enemies that are running around all over the place. The goblins come to you for the most part in creation, and you're again having to kill stuff waiting on the plates anyways, so you're always going to get your bonus on creation. If you get that extra harpy to kill, you'll for sure have the bonus. You're always going to get that high score over 1,000,000, just in case that happens to influence the drops. In my experience, it didn't, but we'll cover that as well going forward toward the end of the video, just kind of some of the bonus stuff, because I know a lot of people just want to get into the meat of this. So once you get to the 447, before I start talking about some of the other things that I do to get to 450 quickly, or that I did to get to 450 quickly, I do want to cover to save a few things for this point. So most people will point this out, but again, not every video is going to tell you, do not pick these things up if you're about to hit 450, because you have 2 guaranteed 450s at 447. These will be 450s for armor pieces, and then you're going to have 1 guaranteed weapon. Now, today's video is probably going to go out on Sunday, and so you'll still have the majority of Sunday once this video is out, and Monday to get yourself to that 447 range so that you can grab these 3 things. And then on Tuesday, you're going to get a reset. Once you do your seasonal hub, you'll get 2 more of these. So if you're watching this video Sunday, Monday, use these before the end of the week, of course, let it reset, and then you're going to have another 2, hopefully in a different slot. So today's is going to be heavy, and then you're going to have 2 armor slots, and then Tuesday might be primary again. So then now you have your heavy 450, you've got your primary 450, you've already got 2 weapon slots filled out, and so you're only going to need 3 weapon slots, and then when you hit the reset, you're only going to need really 1. So what I did was I waited to pick any of this up until I got my drops where I got them, and so I got my 3 armor drops, and I finally got lucky on my last energy drop, or should I say my last prime drop was energy, because I already had a 450 primary. So I was like, that's perfect. I came and picked up my heavy, I came and picked up my 2 missing pieces of armor, and that was it. I was done. So those are going to be the best ways to like get your 447 to 450 section out of the way efficiently. Again, try to straddle that toward the end of the weekend, but there's other ways to do so. So to make sure I touch on those and to make sure not everybody knows, your event track will do the same thing. So if you're still in Solstice Week, or if you're at another event at a future event, should I say, when you're watching this video, in your event track, there's going to be weapon drops, and these will also grow with you, and they're going to be prime level weapon drops. So if I was 447, this would be a 450 energy. So that would take care of my energy. This would take care of my primary. So if you're at that point, I like resist the urge to grab these early to try to boost yourself into the next light level so that you can get to that 447, just slug it out before the reset, and then now you have your primary, you have your energy. Right now, Zavala has your heavy, so your whole left side is done. And if for whatever reason you haven't picked up these yet, this quest line for the solstice will give you whatever your powerful reward would be. So in this case, if you're 447, these are going to be a guaranteed 450 drop. And a great thing that happened to me was when I got done with my Warlock, my Titan and my Hunter hadn't even touched yet. So my Titan and my Hunter still had these quests. I didn't even have to run primes on them. I just went and did the solstice quest line, picked up their 5 pieces of armor, and boom, now I've got 3 characters, all 450 power. So that saved me a lot of time when it comes to the 450 grind, and hopefully everybody who's seeing this has at least 1 or 2 characters that they can do this on, so they don't have to do this again. Another thing that I learned about, and again, like I always check out Diablo's videos, I've watched him for quite a long time, I've subscribed to him on my personal account, not on my YouTube account, and his overall like view of things is very similar to mine, and he's got some nice tips and tricks, and his strategies are also very similar to mine. Like a lot of the stuff that he'll put out a video on is something that I was already doing that I hadn't really put out there, and then he's doing it too because he comes across along very similar. So I mentioned him before in other videos because I was kind of pondering the same question about like what was going on with the gear, and then I watched his video that day talking about how when he put on new gear he got better drops. I tested it out for 2 or 3 days, and then I made my video, and then I made my second video explaining, hey, how the new gear works for you. Now, one thing that happened to me was when I saved these for 450 because I wanted to get tier 5 drops. But he mentioned that if you had your Grandmaster Conquest Delve, you'll actually be able to get your 450 drops at 447 from Grandmaster Conquest Delve. I didn't know that. So I personally saved it for 450. I did it at 450, and it's a good thing that I did because I guaranteed my tier 5, and I got guaranteed my tier 5 Mint Retrograde. As you can see here, I got a really awesome Mint Retrograde roll. This is kind of like almost like a God roll for me because my prior Mint Retrograde had the recycled energy with bait and switch, and I really liked that roll. And then of course I've got the boss damage or the damage roll or the rewind bait and switch with extended mag, and it's got good velocity. I put a backup mag on there, so I have 8 in the magazine plus the rewind. This is a disgusting roll, so I'm glad that I was able to keep that for the end and not actually do that early because my RNG might have been different at that point. But that's something that you can do if you still have your conquest yet to be done and you're at 447. That'll fill out some of your slots. Zavala will fill out the rest of your slots, and then if you're watching this on Sunday, Monday, you'll be able to then say, okay, well now I'm done Tuesday, I don't even have to grind and make myself go crazy. I'll just wait for Tuesday reset, do my seasonal hub, and then come back to Zavala and grab my 2 pieces of armor and whatever weapon that I'm missing. So that's the way that I would recommend getting that 447 to 50 jump. I did that same thing. It took me longer just to get through 446 itself, that 1 power level, than it did to take me from 447 to 450. So that's my good advice up front for people who just kind of like watching the first part of the video to get the meat out of it. That's what I would recommend for the first part of the video. As far as if you're going to watch anything to this point, this is going to be just the major advice to get that last little bit of light and jump and to kind of push yourself to that 450 range so that you can start grinding out good gear like this Unwavering Duty, for example. I've had this actually for quite a while. I got this really early on in the first week of trials. I got lucky and I was already over 400, so I got a lucky tier 5 drop with Rampage and Onslaught, and I've been using that as part of my farming. Cross put out a recent video, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, with his Titan showing a good build focused around either Rampage and Killing Tally or Rampage and Onslaught, and I can guarantee that the Rampage and Onslaught roll is going to be enjoyable for you guys. It's super fun. So go into trials, even if you lose, you still get rewards. You get probably more rewards, better rewards if you're losing, and then getting your 7 games, going to the lighthouse and keep getting the chest over and over again. Then probably if you get your full drops, I know you get a little bit more, but you can go more often if you have like 1 loss on the card. A lot of people are farming it that way, is getting 7 wins with a loss on the card, going and getting the chest, and then doing it again and again. Because once you get your 7 win uninterrupted, whether it's through loss protection or actually 7 wins in a row, then you're done for that lighthouse chest, and you just have to get rewards from game completions. And for whatever reason, Bungie didn't put the solstice rewards on the trials when it was launched yesterday. Let me take a look and see where it's at today here. So today it is solstice, so you actually can knock out all of those things together. You can get a solstice reward, and you have a chance to get a good tier 5 reward of one of the trials weapons. So it's worth it to do it today. Sunday, if you're watching this video, is where I believe I'm going to be releasing it on, and that's something that you can also do to kind of ease the monotony. Before I go into kind of how not to get burnt out, I do want to talk about expectations, because I know the titles of the videos that people put out on how to do these 450 things can be deceiving, and my title was true that it did cut my drop rate in half, but there is a drop cycle that I think not everybody's understanding. Like, I still get comments today on my last few videos talking about how it didn't work for me, probably because you're not using all new gear, or you may be trying to use a featured piece. Somebody mentioned the other day that when they switched off a featured piece and they actually used a brand new piece of exotic armor, like the Anoria, for example, or the new arms for the Titans, those are going to be the fastest way, quote unquote, fastest way of getting the drops. I believe the featured gear probably has a lower percentage increase, whatever percentage increase for rewards you're going to be getting. And somebody pointed out too early on in my videos that it should have been like common knowledge, because when you go into these things and you look at the reward structure and you're looking at the score structure, it tells you that wearing new gear is actually going to give you a higher reward multiplier, but that doesn't really specifically say primes, but it does affect your primes. So it says here your reward multiplier is determined by your power and your equipped new gear. And so apparently the reward multiplier, the higher reward multiplier you can put through into the score, will actually increase that prime drop rate. I guess that's how it works in the back end, but that's basically the goal, is to make sure you're wearing new gear and not just like an older piece or even a featured piece. And some people are like super like, I have to have a sword, I have to have a sword. It makes like a 30-second difference in the end. So you don't have to have a sword. It's not that big of a deal. And a lot of these runs that you're going to be doing, again, I'm going to make an entire separate video on how I do each of the lost sectors and how I farm them even without a sword. Those are going to find a way to delay you even with the sword. So there's only a few things that you can zoom through, and again, it makes about a 30-second difference. And yes, that adds up over the course of thousands of runs, but it wasn't that big of a difference for me, sword or no sword. I would rather have a higher drop chance doing less runs. I'd rather do 10 runs and get a drop than do 30 runs with the sword and get a drop, because that's what people are complaining about. Like, my runs are 20 or 30 deep, and not these 10 runs or 6 runs or 8 runs that you're talking about. And the cycle that I'm mentioning works in this way. Your first kind of rewards when you're first getting out, when you have all new gear, are going to be the 6 to 10 run range. So whatever you're running, whether it's creation at 6 drops, or whether it's K1 8 to 10, Caldera 8 to 10, mostly 10 to 12, those runs are going to be like that for like 2 or 3 primes. Then you're going to get a run that it was 6 before to 8 before is now going to be 10 to 15. And then the ones that were 10 before are now 10 to 15, and then 10 to 15. And then the next run that you're looking at from those 10 to 15 runs is going to be closer to 20. It's going to be dropping like 18-ish, 18, 19. Then you're going to have one really long 25-ish, 20 to 25 drop, no matter what you're doing, whether it's creation, whether it's Caldera, whether it's K1, you're always going to have like one really long, almost, mid-20s drop. It could be 30s, 35 if you're not using new gear, but with new gear, mid-20s was the farthest I went, is like 23, I think, or 24 with new gear without getting a drop. And that's what's throwing a lot of people off, because they put on the new gear and they just happen to be in that long cycle of that 18 to 24, 25 range. And they're like, it didn't work. I did 2 runs back to back and they were both 20. This video is a lie. But what they don't realize is if they keep farming through that kind of drought that they're in, that drop drought, then their next few runs will be like 10 again, and then 12, and then 13, 14. And so they get that relief, but a lot of people give up. And then they'll come and they'll do it later, and then they finally hits them, and they're not going to come back and fix their comment and say, oh, well, I did it the next day after reset, and all of a sudden my drops are good now. They're just going to be like, oh, okay. Or they're just going to abandon all new gear, and they're going to go back to their old setup and say, I was the same as my old setup. I might as well run my sword in the build that I like. So that's one thing that people aren't really keeping mind of, is that, and they don't really know, because it's kind of like unproven science basically at this point. Like, obviously there's been enough people out there talking about it on Reddit and other places that I've seen, they haven't put it quite the same way that I have put it, or some other creators might put it as a drop cycle, but that's what it is. It's literally like some type of a counting system that the game knows when you're getting primes at a certain rate, and will try to slow you down for a period of time to increase your playtime. That's something that Bungie somewhere on the back end put in and didn't tell us in the TWAB or TWID, which is, not surprising. They've had that all season long. They put stuff in this particular season, that they didn't even know about, like with the stats being messed up and stuff like that. So that's one scenario that you really need to know about, is that with the drops, you have to wear new gear. You have to be aware of your drop cycle. There's no duplicate protection, so you can get the same item over and over again. I thought that wasn't a case because I went through a long streak of never having the same drop over and over again. I always got at least a +2 over what I had before, but when I hit that 456, I kept getting the +1, and then I got another +1, and then I was stuck at 7 out of 8 getting the same drop over and over again. So that really delayed me by a whole day. So that's something that, again, you want to keep in mind when it comes to your grind, is these things that I put out there, they exist, they're real, I've shown proof in my videos. They're not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody's going to have a little different RNG, but it's not just RNG, quote unquote, just RNG. There is ways you can influence it, and it's not a placebo, because a placebo, or a myth, as some people have put it, is not provable. It's not real, but as you can see, I've proven it on video, and it is absolutely real. And again, I use this counter, and you can add, you can subtract, but this is usually that 20 that I was talking about, that's the myth, is 20 is not a guarantee. You can go past 20 if you're using old gear. If you're using new gear, yeah, 20 is roughly where you're going to get it with the new gear. That's probably where it came from, but in the end, it's more like between 6 and 12 is your sweet spot when you're wearing new gear, depending on what you're running. So definitely use the click counter. Here's where my advice is going to start on how I kept from getting burnt out. So once I got into the swing of things, once I started to really rapidly gain power, I realized, well, hey, I've never gotten a drop on creation before 6. So then in that case, what you're going to do is you're not going to really focus on anything else. Like, I used to kill all the champions because I was trying to test if like platinum score mattered. It didn't. I used to take my time shooting all of the crystals, trying to make sure that I was getting everything done right. I used to do all the side objectives, for example, in the very beginning on Caldera and on K1. And so let's use Caldera and K1 as examples. When you're zooming through those things on a fallen day on Caldera, you can just run up and queue up the little exploding shank, and then go to the next area and go to the next area. And by the time you reach the third area, you only have to clear out the third area, because the other 2 shanks will have blown up their objective. They kill enemies along the way, then they blow up their objective, and after 3 out of 3, you go into the next area, right? Same thing on K1. You just shoot up the hive gunk if you're on hive day, and go right into the middle, run past all the enemies into the boss, and that's how you speed through on those. Well, K1, I never really get a drop before 10. Yeah, I've got an 8 drop, and I actually got that 8 drop while speeding through everything. So that's how I know that I could get a drop that early. I didn't even do the side objective. So the side objective isn't even a requirement, but I just did it because I was used to doing it, number one, but I also wanted to make sure I wasn't somehow lowering my chances of getting a drop during that run. And so what you'll do is you'll just speed through all the way to 9, for example, on K1, and then on 10, then you start doing the side objective. And I don't do the side objective even if it's like a kill 60 enemies thing. It's going to take me a lot longer than it should. If I kill them along the way, fine, whatever. I usually would just use my class ability and allow my Helion to kill stuff, and if I was close by the boss, then I would just say, okay, let the boss do it. But the idea is that I run through the prerequisite amounts. So I get through my 6, 8, 10, or 12, depending on what I'm running, real fast, not even doing the side objective, and then you do the side objective. And that saved me so much time, because before I was just doing the objective out of habit, but wasting that time doing the objective wasn't even going to get me a drop in those first 10 runs, for example. So that's one bit of advice that'll start speeding up your progression, is burn through the first unnecessary ones that are just completions, so that you can get your completions out of the way to get closer to your drop. Then start doing things that affect your drop rate, and that saves you a lot of time. The second one is that you want to make sure that you're not farming for primes on the solstice itself. Today it's Skywatch. You never want to farm Skywatch anyways because it's one of the slower ones. Depending on the day, it really time gates you a lot. And if you're going to be doing that, you might as well do creation that has better drop rates, in my opinion. You don't want to be doing the salt mines either. But like, for example, if Caldera was a solstice day, a lot of people were farming Caldera and they ended up getting to the point where they were doing 30 runs and then saying, well, you know, I'm farming Caldera. You said it was going to be between 10 and 20, and it's a lie. But the reason why is because the solstice drop actually takes away from the drop rate of your primes, whether it's counting a prime as, for example, a shiny solstice drop or any regular solstice drop. I don't know, but that's what it seemed like, because I tried to do Caldera on solstice day to knock two birds out with one stone, getting primes and solstice drops, and even with all new gear, it was still like 35 runs in, and I had gotten multiple shiny drops in that time. So in my mind, it was the shiny drops that were pushing back my prime drops. The next thing you want to do is to try to switch up your runs. So let's say I'm doing creation and I've gotten my 6 drops out of the way. I'm gotten my 10, 12 drops out of the way. I finally get a drop around 15 or so. And then the next time around, I'm around 15 in and I haven't gotten a drop yet. I'm like, okay, so now I'm on a drought. So now I know that I'm on a drought where I can go as long as 22, 24. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch up to K1 no matter what day it is, because even the hive day is still a 3-minute run, and I'll knock out K1 for the next few rounds until I get close to that 20 mark, that 22, 23 mark, and then I'll start doing the side objective to get my prime out. And once I've done that, I can either keep farming K1 since I'm in the rhythm, I can go farm Caldera for a little bit so that I'm not burnt out on creation, and then I get like an 8 or a 9 or a 10 drop on Caldera. And so that's kind of how I would balance this out. I would kind of farm between these 3. I wouldn't really ever do conflicts, so it was always creation, K1, or Caldera, but K1 is kind of the fastest, most efficient per time run. Again, creation is the better drop per run ratio, and I would kind of balance between these 2, and then Caldera would be a little bit of a palate cleanser because I got to 400 using Caldera, so I was like really burnt out on it. So I already spent time between K1 and creation, and that's where I would say is the best advice that I could give people that are still trying to get that last little bit out, is to kind of vary your runs up. Don't be stuck in the same place for a long time. And once you know you're going to be on your longer runs, like once I've gotten like, you know, to the point where I'm getting around 15 on this one, switching to K1 and getting 3-minute drops for the rest of that until I get my primes back to where they're dropping fast again is the better goal. And then going back to creation to get my 6 drops, my 8 drops, my 12 drops out of the way, and then back to Caldera and K1 for the longer route. That's what I would recommend doing there to keep yourself from going crazy. And so, like I said, I'm going to be making a video following up on this, on how I farm each one, you know, my average drop rates for each one again. But this is the video that I wanted to make for people who were somewhere in their 400 range and they're still like not there yet, but are kind of in striking distance in these last few days of solstice. I wanted to give everybody enough time to get their solstice stuff in at the same time as getting the 450 final, because there's a lot of ways to use solstice and to use everything going on in this event to get yourself to that goal of getting the last little section where you can grab Zavala's pickups, you can grab the pickups from solstice, and you can get your 450 done. And hopefully I see more 450s in. Right now there's only, I think, like 2,300 when I got mine. I was somewhere in that 2,300 range of people that are 450. You know, by the end of next week they'll probably be closer to 3,000, hopefully, with people coming back and getting really motivated with the solstice drops. But other than that, again, if you guys have any additional questions, if you're running into additional problems, you know, if you're looking at anything and you're saying this isn't working for me, just leave me a comment below. I'll be glad to answer those questions and hopefully help you guys kind of break past any plateaus. And thanks very much again for all my new subscribers, everybody kind of finding me through the Guardian rank stuff. And I hope these videos are helpful for you guys progressing through your Guardian ranks and through your 450 power. And I'll see you guys again in the next video.